4, 3, 2, 1. I told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on.
For 7 decades, Michael Caine has been among the world's most renowned and recognisable actors.
It was just what I needed. A 1-inch god with a 2-inch penis.
The star of classics like Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, and The Cider House Rules.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
But also films that brought his career to the brink of complete implosion.
I made a mistake.
Somehow, he has always found a way back.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job.
In this epic podcast series, we will watch and review every Michael Caine movie, from the greatest hits...
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
...to the incredible misses.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
And take a deep dive into the life and work of one of the world's most recognisable film stars.
His name is Michael Caine, and no one will forget his name.
To understand how he has made the mark of Caine.
Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. For God's sake, come in!
Hello and welcome to the Mark of Caine, our regular truffle hunt through the films of Michael Caine, watching every single movie made by the great man, from the classically delectable to the ones that make you maybe feel a little bit queasy for a day or two afterwards. My name is Michael Foley, and joining me as always on this long march is Stephen Black of the Mallow News Twitter Emporium. You'll find him over on at Mallow News making various humorous observations on stuff. But today is a good day for us, Stephen.
Yes, just a quick question on the whole truffle hunting. Are we the adorable little spaniels that you frolic around the place finding little nuggets of tasty gold, or are we the kind of shit covered pigs that the less well off farmers employ to find the truffles?
Most days we're the pigs. Most days we're the pigs on this, but today we're the shiny little spaniels.
Oh, that's fair. That's good to know.
Yeah, no, this is a good day now. We're in that zone again now, where Caine makes a succession of movies somewhere between mediocre and god-awful, then just followed by this absolute titan of a picture, an absolute stonewall gem. Like the last time we were on, we were talking about the 30 Years' War and The Last Valley and shaking our fist at the sky again about his film choices, and I was agonising about where his career was going in 1971. And then he heads up to Newcastle and he makes a film called Get Carter. And I mean, just everything is good again now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said before, watching Michael Caine films is an awful lot like being Andy Dufresne at the end of Shawshank. You're crawling through, however many football fields of sewer shit, only to emerge briefly, gloriously naked in the rain, being cleansed, only to find yet another fucking network of sewers ahead of you. So it's kind of an Ouroboros of fucking sewer tunnel with occasional brief rady respite.
Yeah, we're dancing in the rain now at this point, all right. I mean, this is just, what can you say about Get Carter? Like, we were talking about this during the week. I mean, what can you say that hasn't been said before? It's just a mighty, mighty film. It's
a great film. Really, really good, solid gangster exploitation movie. Best movie so far for my book. So, yeah. Had a great time watching it. Also, I watched it in one sitting, which I haven't done in a while because the last couple of movies that we've watched, or I've watched, certainly have been a bit of an old struggle.
Yeah, and like you can always, I'm finding that you can gauge your own enjoyment of these Caine films by how many times you check how long is left. And I doubt if I checked it at all watching Get Carter.
No, it's really pacey. There's no lags in it. There's no kind of you couldn't like there's. Maybe a couple of things from let's say an ethical perspective that you might want to excise from it, but certainly from an enjoyment perspective, you're not kind of going, no, you could get rid of that and it'd be a lot pacier.
No, it's just brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. I mean, it wasn't considered a classic at the time. It's obviously matured into a classic down the years, but I think there's still enough to get into here. Like, I mean, it says, I think anyway, that, he did Get Carter at a time in his life when he had a bit of anger in him anyway. And it's a role that he's invested in because, he recognizes Carter in people that he knew as a young man in the East End of London. So he's investing a lot in it. He's invested a lot in this. And we've talked about it before, we talk about it again, about how important it is in Caine films that he's invested. It's really important. So there is a lot to get through here, all right. So look, let's just strap in. Let's get ready for this. It's 1971. It's gangstery. It's gritty. There's a lot of shotgun action. There's a fair bit of Caine flesh on show as well, actually. And some of the most brilliant moments of the great man's career all gathered up in the mighty Get Carter.
One day, a professional killer went home to visit his family and found his brother murdered.
Now, who killed him?
I don't know nothing.
And listen, the only reason I came back to this crap house was to find out who did it. And I'm not leaving till I do.
Michael Caine is Carter, a man with unbridled hate.
Do you want to be dead, Albert?
For Christ's sake!
You knew what I'd do, didn't you, Albert?
Christ, I didn't kill him! I know you didn't!
When a professional killer hates, he turns animal. And there becomes but one law in the underworld jungle. Get Carter.
Okay, so where do we start with Get Carter? Do we start with the plot? Do you want to give us a quick run through?
Yeah. I'll try and make it quick because it is a bit plotsy, to be fair. And maybe if it's getting boring, stop me, okay? Because it's not. I don't want to do this film down. It is not in any way boring. It's a fucking brilliant film. But let's get through. The story is that Frank died in a drink driving accident, but Jack ain't buying that, so he wants to find out what's happened. So he goes up to all his old haunts. He finds an old associate, Eric, who's played by Ian Hendry. He finds him at the races, and Eric refuses to tell him who he's working for now, but Carter follows him to the house of Cyril Kinnear, who's played by John Osborne, actually the playwright and an old mate of Caine's, who plays the crime boss, who also tells him little enough. Eric, in passing, just tells Carter just to be careful about damaging relations between Kinnear and Carter's bosses in London, the Fletchers. But in Lee Marvin kind of point-blank style, he ignores all this and he eventually gets a name to follow, and the name is Brumby. So he visits this guy, Brumby, who's played by Brian Moseley, who people might remember as Alf Roberts from Coronation Street, who says he knows zero about Frank's death. And in the meantime, Carter's also minding Doreen, Frank's daughter, and trying to pin down Frank's mistress, Margaret, for a bit more information, but she keeps dodging him. A couple of boys from London are sent to bring Jack home because they're hearing, well, he's causing a bit of trouble, so let's get him out of there. But he dodges him, and he gets rescued by a woman, Glenda, who he has met at Kinnear's place previously when he went to ask him a few questions. So she takes him to Brumby, again, who now says Kinnear was behind Frank's death. And Brumby offers Carter money to kill Kinnear, who's threatening Brumby's gaming business. But Carter thinks he's being played, so he leaves with Glenda. They have some sexy time. And after the sexy time, Carter finds a pornographic movie starring Glenda, Frank's mistress Margaret, Frank's daughter Doreen, and another old associate of Carter's, Albert. Albert, who, by the way, is played by Glyn Edwards of Zulu and Ipcris and later Dave and Minders. So I remember him anyway. So the movies are being made by Kinnear, Carter's old mate. Eric apparently gets Doreen involved. So when Carter gets all his information out of Glenda, he sticks her in the boot of the car and goes looking for Albert. So now things start to get a bit tidied up now from this point. So he finds Albert in the bookies. Albert tells him that Brumby showed Frank the movie involving his daughter and his mistress and so on to incite him to call the cops on Kinnear. And Eric then arranged Frank's death. Carter kills Albert after getting all this detail out. Then there's a shootout with these London guys who are trying to bring him home. And in the melee, the car that Carter was driving gets shoved into the river. But of course, Glenda's in the boot, so she gets drowned. Eventually, Carter finds Brumby. He beats him up, chucks him off a high building, and then posts the pornographic movie to the police to nail Kinnear. In the meantime, he's made a deal with Kinnear to get Eric, who's the man who killed his brother, in exchange for Carter's silence. Kinnear agrees, but he also hires a hitman to kill Carter. So Carter then takes Margaret off, Frank's mistress, kills her and plants her body on the grounds of Kinnear's house. Then he goes off to meet Eric, who he kills after a chase down an incredibly grim beach. So he's walking back down the beach smiling, but there's one more brilliant twist. He's just about to fire the shotgun that he actually never fires in the movie, but carries around all the time. He's about to fire the gun into the sea when he's shot by the hitman. It's a fantastic twist at the end of just an unrelentingly bleak, powerful, highly intense film. And I mean, you're right. It's the best film we've seen so far involving Caine. We both thought that The Italian Job was his best performance today. I think this one, it beats The Italian Job up a stick.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say from The Italian Job's perspective, it's pretty much kind of a raw leading man, charming, bit of a geezer role. which he did very, very well. But this actually requires him to plumb emotional depths that he's previously only kind of skimmed over. So it's excellent, and he's excellent in it. I mean, where to start? I mean, Mike Hodges' direction is fantastic in this. It's, gives it almost a documentary-like feel, especially the kind of the opening credits and when he's, making the trip down to Newcastle. It almost looks like a really bleak 70s ad for British Rail. He's going down business class, obviously, or first class there, enjoying his full English breakfast of, eggs, poppers and downers or whatever it is. He's on. Come here, did you twig, because I didn't, that the Hitman is on the same train?
No, I didn't. No. But he is. He's on the same train. He's not even given a name. That poor guy, like, he's not even given a name. He's got a ring with a J on it. He's actually, and I think in the original print, the guy who plays J, who quite appropriately, I've forgotten his name now, but he's not actually in the original credits either. In the closing credits, it's unbelievable. But he is. Yeah, apparently he's on the train going to Newcastle as well. Yeah.
And Newcastle as well. I mean, Jesus, what a background. I mean,
yeah, it's unbelievable.
I'd say it must have done for the Newcastle tourist industry what Chernobyl did for the Pripyat tourist industry. Because Jesus, I can't imagine anyone as bleak as 70s Britain was. Anyone from outside Newcastle looking at Get Carter going, "Geez, I'd love to go there for a stag do."
There was an old ad for Hovis bread back in the 80s. Do you remember this? Was a lad pushing a bike?
Again, this would have been on a non-terrestrial channel, so I wouldn't have been exposed to the likes of your Posh TV.
Yeah, or Posh TV, or clothes hanger hanging off the chimney, grabbing the signal from Wales. There was an ad for Hovis with a lad pushing, I think it was a bike up a cobbled street, delivering bread. It was all very kind of idyllic. Well, I mean, this is the sort of nightmare version of this. The streets, the cobbled streets. It's dark. It's dank. It's smoky. It's coal everywhere. It's just so gritty. And as you say, Mike Hodges had a background with World in Action. He had a background in documentary, again, we go back to this thing about, I think everybody in this film is invested in various different ways. He goes and does huge research into it's kind of the Newcastle underworld, if you like. I mean, what does it feel and look like to be a gangster? And Caine, similarly, as you say, he plumbs his own background and his own knowledge of these things. He said a very interesting thing about it, not 20 years ago. He said that Carter is the dead-end product of my own environment. He said he's the ghost of Michael Caine.
Yeah, that sounds like bullshit.
I thought it was a very nice kind of way of putting it.
Oh, it's a good quote. I'd say it's a great quote for an interview or for publicity or that, but it's bullshit. There's no way. I mean, Jesus, there's nothing in his biography that gives away the fact that he was in any way tempted down the path of a gangster. So Jesus Christ, remember he was so afraid of having sex when he was in Korea, in case he might get the clap, that he just abstained completely. Like, this isn't a ne'er-do-well gangster who's watching pornography with his mates and regularly having impassioned embraces with the ladies of the night,
Well, he has said himself that he was a physical coward, is his own words, but he has also said that he did join a gang at some stage in his teenage years, and like he did base this character on someone he knew. Actually, the gangster that he based it on told Caine afterwards he thought the film was rubbish. He thought it was total rubbish. So I mean, he's drawing on something, but I think also, like, my kind of pop psych sort of theory is that this is a period of his life just before he meets his wife Shakira, and he's drinking a lot. He's in a kind of a dark enough place, and I think he's drawing on that. Like, what amazed me about it when I was reading about why was he drinking at this point, I was kind of curious because he's done so many interviews down the years, and you kind of wonder what's the answer here. He talks about being tortured by the idea at the time that he was not going to get another decent movie, that he had a level of self-examination and self-doubt that was actually damaging him. Like he's loaded. Money isn't a problem, but he's still concerned that he needs to keep the money rolling in. He's afraid that his acting career might disappear. It's not going to disappear, but he seems to be tormented by all this stuff around the time he's making Get Carter, and I think that feeds into what he brings to it. Maybe that feeds into it more so than the gangster stuff that he's drawing at.
Also, it's called acting, though, isn't it?
What do you mean?
They give you the lines, You invest some emotion. You do the screen. Yeah, yes, I suppose he may be drawing on something, like a bit more than, just doing that. But also at the end of the day, he is an actor. He's supposed to act. And I think from a personal perspective, this is the first kind of movie that he's actively gone out and produced. So this is his first producing venture. So he's been involved in it from the very beginning in terms of optioning the book, in terms of recruiting with his co-producer, Mike Hodges. So I think, like I said, with all of them, it may not even be the emotional thing. It's the actual investment of his time and his interest in making it a success has an exponential effect on his performance.
Yeah, and Mike Hodges gets the best out of him. I mean, he knows sort of when to let the camera linger on Caine. I mean, how many times in this movie do you have conversations going on off camera, but the camera stays on Caine?
Yeah, no, he's completely the focus of the movie, and rightly so. And he's allowed he's letting actual emotions pass across his face, so it's a bit more than the standard, let's say, blockbuster treatment that he was given. He's given it all to in the previous movie. So this is the first. Anyway, for me, it's the first actual time that I've given serious consideration to him actually being the character actor that he says he is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was the scene. There was the scene when he's watching the pornographic movie and he realizes that his niece is in this porn movie, and everything starts coming together for him. That's an incredible scene.
It's fantastic, and that's when you see Caine, the actor. I mean, it's the amount of emotions that play across his face within a couple. You know exactly what he's thinking without having to say anything. You could tell exactly what he's going through as a character. You can understand his rage and what he does next. It's brilliant. It's the best thing he's ever done.
It is by a country mile. Even there were small things he did as well. For example, like when he got the script, he removed any pleasantries. I didn't notice this watching the film, but I'd say if we were ever to watch it back, see how many times character actually says hello to anybody or goodbye. He just walks in, walks out, and he also pared back the violence a bit. He didn't do 6 punches where 1 punch would do. It was all very just sparing, but hugely impactful. Then as a result, it's just a master performance.
Yeah, I mean, they said that the himself and Hodges, their approach to the violence was to make it realistic. So, no kind of, somebody gets beaten half to death and then the next scene is seen walking around with just a plaster on their head. That, that it should, as you say, the violence should be impactful and that people should be, I mean, if you look at Alan Armstrong after he's beaten up by the street toughs, you can see he's seriously injured. It's debilitating. And even when not Alf Stewart, that is a different
different soap, different continent.
You drug out. When Al from Coronation Street is given the heave-ho off the side of the multi-story car park, he lands on a car and injures the occupants in the car, which as Caine said, you wouldn't have seen in the movie before. So, it is good from that perspective. I guess good. It's great to see a bit of impactful violence. So your bloodless stuff. You really enjoy it. Really nice to see people getting actually hurt. I mean, your only wish from watching this, going, geez, I really hope a stuntman was seriously life-changingly injured as a result of that, because God, it feels great watching it.
It was a movie that benefited from the relaxing of the censorship laws at the time, which we'll come back to in a second, right? But just when you mentioned Alan Armstrong there, it might be a good time just to mention a couple of the supporting actors. Some of them were very, very good. And again, we talk about being invested in their roles in different ways. Ian Hendry, for example, who plays Eric, the guy who has killed Carter's brother and gets killed at the very end. He was actually the original choice for Carter. But he was struggling with alcoholism at the time. He was in such poor shape, the poor guy, that the final scene with him is a long run along the beach and Carter is trudging after him. And he finally catches him and kills him. They actually had to film the last bit first because they reckoned that poor Ian mightn't be able for the final scene if he had to do the running bit first. But apparently Hendry was a contemporary of Caine's. He resented Caine's success and Caine was aware of this. So Hodges and Caine actually used that tension, if you like, in the scenes with him. And, there's definitely your man's a real sneering presence on the screen at all times whenever he's on it.
Yeah, I know he is great in it. And as you say, I think the Hendry, as you say, was possibly the dark image of Caine's past or potential future or whatever the hell you said about, him saying, oh no, I could have turned out like a gangster. I think if he'd taken the wrong turn, he could have turned out like Ian Hendry. He didn't die long after, like.
Yeah, no, well, in the mid 80s, yeah, absolutely. But you're right. There's a lot of kind of sliding doors bits possibly with him. John Osborne, the playwright, looked back in anger. As I said, it was a friend of Caine's. Learned to play. There's a very intricate scene playing poker. He didn't know how to play poker. He went off and learned how to play. I tell you how.
What a waste of fucking time! What a waste of fucking time! What a waste of fucking time!
Why? It invested in realism.
Oh, dear boy! I must learn how to play this game of poker. Is that how you pronounce it? Is it not like Mr. Bridge? No, away I must go and find out how to play this very complicated game, which all I need to know is written in the script for me. But no, I must be able to put my card down on the table and talk about bluffs like a man who is familiar with all facets of this very complex game. What a load of shit.
I'll tell you who is the
man who was bored. There was a man who was bored. Do you know what I might? It was vital for the fucking 5 or 6 minutes that I'm on screen that I must have complete and utter control and mastery of the game of poker.
I'll tell you who was most invested in his role though was Alf Roberts. Alf Roberts was a devout Catholic and was so disturbed by the script that he actually went and consulted with his priest before he took the role. The priest, after probably enjoying the script, let's say, said, "Oh no, this is actually a morality tale about good and evil." And
quiet, Alf. Right. I'm just getting to the good. I'm just getting to the good bit here.
Did you see the bit here about the phone sex?
Yeah. 2 Hail Marys there, and come back to me in 10 minutes.
So, we're all invested. We're all invested in it. Where do you want to? What bits of this struck your eyes, as it were?
Well, we've mentioned the opening sequence. I think, like you say, it's trying to pick a point that is, has not been done to that. I think so. Like most mature film critics, which I feel we are now, I think we need to focus on the boobage and sexual content of this movie because he's ramped it up. We've gone from kind of Vaseline smeared lens opacity of previous 60s movies. Let's say think about Deadfall or The Magus, and now we're purely in the realm of, oh God, please stop. This looks like walking in your parents.
Sex scenes are gritty.
Yeah, there's like I keep on forgetting her name. I just called her Cheryl Cole. You got your one going around in the fast car and kind of intercutting her changing the gears, and then between that and the two of them having at it in the bed. And again, Caine's technique here leaves enough. It's very, very unerotic. It is essentially like he's like a truffle hound. There's a lot of snuffling in around the neck area. It's like he's trying to find drugs or something. You would see a similar technique at an airport from lads coming back from Amsterdam. It's great. And then there's the landlady with whom he beds. That's fair play to him as well. This is not Jack Carter is not a discerning man. He is not a man who kind of goes, no, I have certain standards. No, there's very much, if it moves, Jack Carter will consider making sweet gangster snuffle love to you.
So if you're kind of unimpressed with the practical, kind of what about the theory then? There's the phone sex scene with Britt Eklund, by the way, who's in the film for about 30 seconds, and I think was probably kind of one of the headline actors on the poster.
Bizarre, all right. The phone sex scene is hilarious. I think it's the most I've ever laughed at a Caine movie. It's him insisting, obviously, he's staying in a B&B, so again, cast your minds back before we're born even. You go to B&B, there may be a phone in there, but the phone is in the living room because it's, for the owner-occupier, it's not for the guests. So he has to use the phone, sits down, you're once there in her rocking chair in the foreground of the shot while Caine is there ringing his mistress, who's also his boss's mistress, and engaging in a very hilariously graphic bout of phone sex, while your one's rocking in the foreground becomes more vigorous. It's fantastic. And a fair play to Britt Eklund. I've not seen her in a role like this, and she's great. I normally would. I think the only other thing I've actually seen her in is The Wicker Man, and I was interesting. The whole thing was interesting.
It was. It came out of nowhere. Obviously, as you can imagine, got cut out of plenty of versions that we're seeing on TV and stuff like that. But it's pretty full on.
I know I'm going to contradict what I said at the start. There's no. I'm glad it's in there because it's hilarious. But there is, from a plot perspective, other than showing that he's having an affair with his boss's mistress, there's no need for it to be in the movie whatsoever.
Not at all. Not at all. No. But nonetheless, you know, she plays the little while she's in the movie, she definitely brings something to the role. And I mean that like genuinely, like not just in a kind of or Mrs. kind of way. She really does kind of bring something to the role. Like everybody does really. There's really no bum notes in this at all. Bum notes in this at all.
Do it. How would you have liked it? That'd have been your daughter being posted in
A couple of observations. Nobody seems to lock their fucking door.
No.
You know, I know nobody appears to have anything worth robbing, but Jesus Christ, nobody's locking their door here. Kane's walking into, you know, like heavily armed houses, no hassle. The lads are breaking into his B&B because the door is open. There's no issue there. Naked Caine. We've not covered Naked Caine. A marvelous performance here by Caine's entire body as he strolls naked through the bed and breakfast and threatens two lads, armed only with his massive shotgun. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I'm making that obvious innuendo because the other characters make a similar innuendo there as well as he chases them out. They get Captain Sensible and some other lad.
That's right. The guy head off of Captain Sensible. No happy talk though.
Sorry, that was just yet another reference for the millennials who aren't listening. Yeah, fair play to him. It's not something, again, you would imagine back when we were talking about the de-gayification that there would never have been a suggestion that he would be in a situation like that without a woman being at the forefront of it. So it's good to see we're come completely away from it. We're in a completely different decade. He's well established as a very heterosexual leading man and probably playing the most heterosexual leading man that he's played to date. There is Jack Carter. There is no messing about.
Absolutely none whatsoever. And also, he's moved a long way away from the svelte feet-shaped Caine of the mid-60s, late 60s, when he was on the actor's diet, when he could like turn sideways and he'd disappear. This is a full-bodied Caine. The hair is growing out now. It's getting that bit of a sort of a crimp going on.
He's on the Smirnoff plant.
The Smirnoff plan, absolutely. He's doing a lot of carousing. So he's looking quite the part. I mean, he's 38 years of age too. He's smoking 60 fags a day. I mean, you know.
And as well, like I made the point to you, last week. He looks taller in this movie than he's ever looked. I don't know, is it something deliberately that they've done to frame him that way? I know he's like 6'1.5", but he looks gigantic next to every other character. There's been a deliberate attempt to make sure that, you know, Jack Carter is a big man.
I tell you what, another thing that kind of struck my eyes, and maybe this is ridiculous, the title, Get Carter.
Yes. It makes no sense. If I'm watching a movie called Get Carter, I'm going to be very disappointed if there's no scene in there where a mob boss angrily points at an underling and goes, Get Carter. And there's nothing in there. There's nothing there to indicate that anyone ever wants to, you know, they want to get Carter. But I mean, if you need to say it.
I mean, I guess they got him in the end, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like just doesn't feel quite right.
It'd be more of a kind of crime caper or flick. It's not really in keeping with the tone here. Like, I mean, what was the book called? Jack Goes Back to Newcastle or something like that.
That's something like that. It's like, it's kind of like something you might have in primary school.
Jack's Return Home. Jack Carter Returns Home or some shit.
Something like that. I mean, they had a couple of other names for it. There aren't much. Carter's the name was one option. Here Comes Carter. And then another one called Bent, which makes no sense whatsoever. So, I mean, they were clearly struggling for a name.
Carter, the ultimate sex machine.
Yeah, well, luckily someone else took that on and made some fine records with it, I'm told. Yeah, it's just a great movie. It's just a great, but the reviews, the reception at the time, wasn't very, it's kind of mixed. Sight and Sound said, well constructed, good characterization, but it lacked mystery and charisma. They also said this I found kind of indicative maybe of how critics were still getting their head around a kind of new, kind of more nuanced way of developing characters in movies. One issue was that the Caine character was very contradictory. Like, was it an avenging angel coming up from London to do right, or was it an anti-hero, this kind of, kind of feckless sort of completely without scruples, without morality sort of individual that you couldn't be both in the one movie?
I mean, 100% can. He's Jack Carter is a bad man. There's no two ways about it. Then the film doesn't leave you. I don't think it's in any way ambiguous. I mean, he straight up murders two women in this movie. One passively and the other deliberately. So he kills Cheryl Cole by just not doing anything to alert the Captain Sensible and his mate that the car that they're pushing into the river contains her in the boot. And then he deliberately kills Margaret, his dead brother's mistress. Gives her a fatal overdose basically to frame Kinnear, so that when the cops raid the mansion at the end, that they find the body and he has him in the frame. So he's not a good man. He's a justification for what he does. You can see why he does what he does, but I mean, to the extent in which he does it, there's no excuse from that perspective. So there's no ambiguity there at all.
I think that's the genius of the movie, and the genius of Caine in the movie is that you can totally understand what he's doing, even though it's appalling. And that kind of idea of, I totally get why this is happening, and I'm actually emotionally invested in it. And I think also that's what I mean. As always, there's a load of misogyny in this. I mean, I think Margaret, the mistress, gets slapped at once. He slaps her, a proper slap as well. And there's a lot of this stuff going on. Women again are being kind of used as vessels for various different reasons. But you kind of go, it doesn't, I put it this way, I was a hell of a lot less bothered by the misogyny in Get Carter than I was by Alfie, let's say. And I mean, Alfie was, it was played in a different way as well. But it was just the way it was all put together.
Alfie was billed as a comedy. This is not. And this is very, if you saw a character like Carter and the people that he hangs around with in the 70s treat women in this context with respect or deferential, it would feel ungenuine, if that's a word. It just wouldn't feel real.
Disingenuous.
There's disingenuous. Sorry, thanks. That's why you're the writer.
That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. So yeah, I mean, it would not be believable.
No, you're right. I'm that's it. I mean, Pauline Kael for the New Yorker, I think, nailed it. She said there was a calculated soullessness to this movie, and she actually, touched on something. She said, does this kind of characterization kind of signal a new genre of virtuoso viciousness? That this was, was this going to inspire a certain type of gangster character, a certain type of gangster movie?
Did she forget about Point Blank, did she?
Yeah, possibly. Well, I suppose, look, there's a hell of a lot of parallels to Point Blank. Actually, one of the reviews actually points out Point Blank in a negative way in relation to Carter. It makes it look, Point Blank being a vastly superior film in that reviewer's view. I think Carter is a bit more violent than Point Blank, if you know what I mean. It's more obviously violent. There's a bit more going on. I don't know. I'm finding it hard to explain.
There's more. Point Blank is a lot more stylized than Get Carter. Get Carter is more gritty, I think, as we said, than Point Blank, and it's really kind of more, Ken Loach meets Martin Scorsese. It's very much these are the streets upon which terrible things happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the word exploitation at the very top of this episode as well, and I think you're spot on. I mean, you can see more of these exploitation movies become a thing in the early 70s. Actually, there was a blaxploitation movie called Hitman made about a year or two later that's based on the same book as Carter. Pam Grier was in it, and Bernie Casey, and all these other standard kind of stars of the blaxploitation genre. So there are obvious parallels there as well.
But it washed its face in Britain. It made money. Like, it did make money back. It wasn't a box office failure. It completely tanked in the States. I mean, Red Line, it was shown in a double bill with a Frank Sinatra Western. That's how it was marketed over there. And you could, two completely different things. There's just it was doomed to fail. But also, there's no way any American would look at Get Carter in the 70s and go, wow, there's no way. There should be no expectation that it would do well in America.
It is what we would call now a quintessentially British film, in the same way, in a different way that The Italian Job is and was. It's a quintessentially British film. There was concern, again, particularly in the first, I think the opening scene is a long conversation, a lot of strong London accents, a lot of Cockney accents. They said, people won't understand this. They actually dubbed it, I think, for an American audience. But it was poorly marketed. It as you say, it did very poorly in America, but it again, it just reinforces Caine as the biggest British star out there, really.
Yeah, I think even one of the campaign, one of the movie posters was kind of done in the same style as Thunderball, the same kind of graphic design, so completely mismarketed.
It's a dreadful poster.
Awful. The latter ones where it gives away the ending of the movie are much better, where you see the hitman and Carter with a target on his head as he's walking along the beach, and you kind of go, yeah, that completely gives away the ending. But I suppose out of context, you have no idea.
You have no idea.
There's an awful lot in common, again, with The Italian Job in terms of, washed its face at the time, as you say, in the UK, but then enjoyed a huge resurgence during the 90s Lads and Loaded era, where you have people like Tarantino coming out, obviously with these, the scene Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, citing it as a massive influence, citing it as one of the best British gangster films, or best gangster films of all time. And then you've got, as part of that resurgence, as part of people getting interested in, it kind of leaps up the ranks of the BFI's top British films of all time. So I think it's like the top 20 or top 30 at the moment.
It is about number 15, I think. Number 15. Obviously, you have the Guy Ritchie genre, the Lock, Stock, and all these films. Which I'll be absolutely straight with you on this. I'm not an expert on those movies. I've seen bits of them, not enough to even say. But I mean, I presume it's the tone and the feel of them is all Larry London gangsters.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you've got the Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels thing with Vinnie Jones with the shotgun. Images, the similar imagery that's used at Get Carter, but it's not in the same league. He's not. Guy Ritchie isn't really interested in realism. He's kind of this hyper reality that he creates for his movies. Some of them are well edited. Most of his movies are not very good.
Stylized, it's a stylized thing, and that's the huge strength of Get Carter, is that it is not in any way stylized, and that's what makes it great. So washed its face, of course, and of course we'll be revisiting Get Carter in many episodes time again, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole thing as well. We could be looking at when we hit the 90s. Is that again? What impact does this revitalization of Caine's movies? What impact does that have on his career? And I can only imagine that it involves him taking a lot of easy money to make an awful lot of very bad decisions. One of which is to star in a remake of Get Carter with the Sylvester Stallone in the lead.
Yeah, and in which Caine, I think, plays Brumby. But as far as I'm concerned, there's only one Alf Roberts.
Not anymore, but yeah.
At the time. So listen, we're on to marks for Caine. Obviously, we don't mark the film. I mean, I think the film will be getting a pretty solid 8 or 9 from us anyway. But what are we giving Caine's role here?
10.
Yeah, it's just a stonewall bullseye 10. I'm thinking through the roles that I know him for, and even already, I'm going to struggle to think of anything better than this. I just Cider House Rules. I like him in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but it's nowhere near this. I can't think of anything. I hope to be surprised. I really do.
Me too. I hope to looking at all the movies that we've left to watch and looking at the movies that I haven't, an awful lot of them I haven't seen. So like I haven't seen Muppet Christmas Carol. So maybe that's the next 10 out of 10. But I hope to be surprised. Jesus, I really do hope to be surprised.
I think we all do. Now, of course, he's at this point now, he's done Get Carter. He is at that Troy McClure stage of his career where he can go one of two ways. He can make another absolute stonewall, brilliant film, or he can do something else. So,
fantabulous contraptions of Horatio Hofnagel time.
We can't be sure if this is going to be a fantabulous contraption or not. But what I can tell you is that he heads a little bit further north for the next film. He goes from Newcastle up to Scotland for another Robert Louis Stevenson adaptation. How many actors can say that they were in 2 movies based on Robert Louis Stevenson films? In this case, The Wrong Box, and next up, Kidnapped.
Yeah, I hope it's just Caine, because I hate Robert Louis Stevenson books, and I hate the movies that are based on them.
You don't like Treasure Island?
No, I fucking it's all
God, I'm learning so much about you doing this thing, and it's not all good. Let me ask you something, right? There are people here who probably may not, and I'm shocked, but may not have listened to the other episodes, right? Our last Robert Louis Stevenson dip was The Wrong Box, and I think it's safe to say that we're both still, if we're not scarred by it, we both kind of have a residue feeling towards that film that, well, I hope it's not going to impact on this one.
It's awful.
It's god awful. Let's hope Kidnapped is better. I'm assuming there's going to be an accent.
I hope so. Yeah, it's disappointing he didn't go for the Newcastle accent, because casting our mind back to him convincing a casting director that an Indian accent was the same as a Welsh one. I could only imagine that we'd be in real cancelled territory here.
Oh, God. I just can't wait to hear the Scottish accent. So, listen, go watch Kidnapped. Come back. Join us again. We'll rip through Kidnapped and see if it's any cop.
Yeah. And as usual, if you want to ask us any questions about Kidnap, you can DM us, which I hope stands for direct message, on Twitter at Michael Caine1. And we'll see you next time. Actually, we won't see you next time. We'll hear you next time. No, actually, we won't have any interaction with you whatsoever. You'll be listening to us.
Yes.
You'll be listening to us next time, which is really not as streamlined as you'll see us later. Which I suppose that's why television still has the edge over podcasts.
You can stop talking now. Goodbye, everybody.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Only nice ones, though. Mean comments will make Alfie cry, and no one wants to see that. The Michael Caine podcast is written, researched, and presented by Stephen Black and Michael Foley, and edited by Andrew Foley. Music is composed by Stephen Black. If you'd like to get in touch, you'll find us on Twitter at Mallow News and at Michael Caine2. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll find all the rest wherever you get your podcasts. The Michael Caine is a Mallow News 2 Cubes production. See you next time.
Come on.